Hi guys, well welcome again to another episode of the Hdyh Health Podcast. Today we have Chelsea Mansfield, Chickbro is what we like to call her. She's a great friend of ours. She's also very good friends with Joan Lindley, which was the episode that we shot last week, and it's fantastic. She moved to Austin recently. She's quickly become part of our community, and so we talked a little bit about that. We titled this episode Friendship with Your Body because that's what it's all about. It's about learning what your body is trying to tell you. We got into hormones, we got into taking basically your health into your own hands. We talked about anything subjects regarding women's health, and just being able to learn about like vibrational energy and any type of other types of medicine and energies that are very healing to us, and how they're coming into the forefront and how they're making an impact in our everyday lives, specifically how they've made an impact in her life as well too. So I'm excited for you guys to listen to this. As always, this episode is sponsored by MSW Nutrition. Check out the supplements. You'll notice that Chickbro goes into a nice little almost like a sales spiel at the beginning, just because she's such a fan of the MSW Nutrition products. So make sure to check out the website. Use a code HDYH or Hdyh Health to get 10% off. And other than that, let's get to it. You got this shit knocking though. All right, guys. Well, welcome to the Hdyh Health Podcast. We are here with Chelsea, aka Chickbro.
Chickbro.
We all call you that, and I love that you love it.
I love it.
Right? Like, some people call me Tex-Mex Yogi, and it's really
your Instagram handle.
It's really rare. Well, because people know that my name is Baldo, and I guess that's easier. It's one syllable, right?
Yeah.
As opposed to like.
Baldo's such a good name too.
Or two syllables.
Yeah, Tex-Mex Yogi is like. That's so awesome. That's such a good Instagram handle too.
Yeah, I forgot what it was. I was actually hanging out. Today's John's son's birthday, which is why he couldn't join us today. But I was hanging out with his son, and he said something about like, you're from Texas and like you do a lot of yoga. I was like, yeah, I'm a Tex-Mex Yogi, and then that's kind of how. I was like, oh, I should probably change my Instagram. And
so good. Yeah, it's perfect for Austin too. You know what I mean? It's like yeah.
It's fantastic.
It's great.
All right, so we're gonna get into this. Before we do that, let's drop some bliss.
Yeah. Yes. I specifically did not take my bliss today because I figured you would want to.
Yeah, and so this is our awesome serotonin dopamine booster that we've created under the.
Why can't I get that?
Under the MSW Nutrition brand, because actually part of the story with this one is that I used to battle with like sadness / depression, and we were trying to figure out something from a biochemical standpoint that could help with that, because taking some meds that are designed to, SSRIs are designed to block certain pathways. I just have to go with the mouth. But they don't make more serotonin, which is part of the thing that the brain is trying to uptake at that point. So SSRIs work that way, where they block the receptors that uptake them, so that way you have more of a chance to reuptake them and do something with it. But that still means that you should be making serotonin to then be able to do that. And if you don't, then, well, you don't. And I mean, it still works better than nothing, right? But in our case, is that we wanted to create something that helps you with serotonin and dopamine. It's cool because it also helps with knee joints and also helps with sleep. Yeah,
it's helped me too. John recommended me to take it for just helping my brain understand like the cravings, and of course, like, I mean, you probably understand a lot more of the science than I do, but yeah, in terms of like my mind understanding whether I was hungry or just whatever, like craving something, I would have like up and down crashes of like, I need salt, I need sugar, and all these things, and it's really helped my mind like kind of equal out. So again, you could probably explain this better, but like since I've started taking it, I mean, A, I feel amazing after I take it, but B, my brain can actually like better tell me like, hey, you're just hungry, like you're not actually craving anything specific, like feed your body because you need the fuel.
Yeah.
So it's been amazing.
Well, it's really interesting because when it comes to cravings and all that, I do a lot of fasting. And for a while I was doing some coaching on fasting, and it's like, oh, you just drink water. And I was like, yeah, for like 3 to 5 to 6 days or whatever. But
Yeah.
What you really notice out of the fast is how many times you eat just out of habit,
Right.
and not because you're actually hungry. Because
Right.
the hunger parts, even on a longer fast, you feel hunger and it's like 5-10 minutes and then it goes away
Yeah.
before you know that is. But if it lasts longer, two things. Well, first of all, if it lasts longer than 30 minutes, then I'm just like, just stop. Like, it's not like, if you're that hungry, just stop.
Right.
But salt,
Yeah.
I just lick some salt, and usually,
That's smart. Yeah.
and it's because it's an electrolyte, right? And
Right.
so, and hormones are like an electrical signal, and when your salts are off balance, then there's a miscommunication. So you add some electrolytes, and all of a sudden the communication improves,
There it is.
and you're
yeah.
like, oh, I'm not actually really hungry. It's just something else.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah, that is fantastic to know about too. And so many people like will talk about like low sodium diets and whatnot, and of course you don't want to have like way too much sodium in your system, right? But like I think that's a perfect argument to argue against like yeah, sodium's good for you,
Yeah.
right?
Well, I mean, it is. It's
Yeah.
there's sodium channels, and technically, whenever you're contracting and extending muscles, there's sodium. Well, there's electrolytes being transferred in certain ways
Yeah.
in order to make that possible, and it's actually more work to extend a muscle than to contract it.
Interesting.
Did you know that?
No, I
Yeah.
didn't know that.
Well,
Learn something new every day.
I know, right?
That's why I come in here. Yeah.
It was like, that's why I come here.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a really interesting idea. There's a book that we and I always recommend books, but there's one called Mitochondria. I forgot what it's called actually. I'll put it in the show notes, but it's a mitochondria book, and it's called Mitochondria and the Future of Medicine. And it's really about like targeting your mitochondria, and it goes into all those channels and all that, and that's part of what I learned. And then that's kind of also, and not that salt would be the solution to it, but
Yeah.
kind of heart attacks is like the idea that it can't open up more because there's not enough being transferred there.
Interesting.
Yeah.
I just started taking the mitochondriac, by the way.
Yeah.
Like, I think it's maybe been like a couple weeks. That stuff is awesome. It makes me feel like I'm limitless. Like, I feel like I could like run through cars and things like that.
Well, it's yeah.
It's amazing.
Well, thank you.
Yeah.
It's really interesting because that's one of my favorites as well too.
Yeah.
And
I was taking it at night actually, and I felt like, I don't know if, and maybe you could tell me why, but I felt like at night it kind of would keep me up a little bit.
Oh,
like I
definitely.
had more energy. Yeah, so I started taking it like with lunch or after breakfast.
Well, definitely.
Yeah.
So NAD, you can feel NAD.
I was gonna say, yeah.
I don't understand. I still don't understand why. I don't know if John knows exactly the reason why either, because I don't know if it really matters. But for some reason, when you take NAD as a pill or whatever, it just breaks down and doesn't do anything. Or at least in our experience. And
Right.
I know that they keep trying different things, and there's newer supplements coming out all the day, and we haven't tried all of them. But
Right.
but the ones that we have tried and the experience that we've heard from other people on just NAD as a supplement is that it breaks down and you don't feel the same thing. Obviously, you're not going to feel the same thing because that's
Right.
a bag, but I know that it has something to do with the breakdown of consuming NAD. But resveratrol, the methylated resveratrol that we have in the mitochondria,
Yeah.
as well as, because there's that, and there's quercetin, and there's, I forgot what else, and there's pterostilbene. They help you produce more NAD. And so that's, but it's all a mitochondrial thing that's happening, and there's a lot of energy being transferred. So yeah, you get a lot of.
Yeah, I feel like, I mean, in my brain, I'm like, my mitochondria are like doubling or something. Like, I don't know. I feel like, I'm like,
yeah. Well,
just ready to go.
like you wouldn't get a NAD IV right before you go to bed. Like
Yeah, right.
No.
Doesn't make any sense. Yeah.
Now, what's interesting about it is that when I get NAD in an IV, I get all this energy. I can go for a run, but even if I don't go for a run, after a little while, I do work out quite a bit anyways, but
Yeah.
like let's say 30, 45 minutes after an IV, I get really sleepy.
Interesting.
But that's probably because my body's wanting to go into rest so it can
Yeah,
repair,
Right.
which is part of what's.
So interesting.
Yeah.
Okay, well, I'm super glad that I'm taking it not at night anymore. Because, yeah, it was like, I think it was like a week. And I was like, I am like so awake at night, and I haven't like I've been doing so well like with Zen and all this. Like I feel like my circadian rhythm is better these days, and like I was getting really good sleep, and then all of a sudden I wasn't, and I was like, the only thing I've changed is taking mitochondriac, and I was like, okay, let me take it earlier
Yeah.
and see what happens, and yeah, it's been fantastic.
So this just turned into a complete commercial on all our supplements. So if you're listening, you should go to MSW Nutrition, use the code HDYH, which is Hdyh Health, and get 15% off.
Yeah, it just turned into a whole thing, but like I mean, I'm
Yeah.
down to I mean, everything you guys do has changed my life. So
And what we were talking about is that which is we're going to get into your health
yeah,
story,
yeah.
is that you came into because you've seen so many different doctors, I guess, and
Yeah, so yeah, it was back home. Started experiencing weird, just like random health things that like I had never experienced before, like getting allergies, like seasonal allergies, which doesn't really have much to do with whatever. But I was like, okay, weird, right? Like I never had anything like that growing up. This was probably when I was like 23, 24. And I had just felt like I was in like a fog all of a sudden. Like I was like, I don't understand why I feel just so blah. And that's literally the only way that I could describe it, was like, I just feel blah. Like I don't feel great like I did, a couple years ago. Like what all of a sudden is going on? And, I mean, post college, you probably like, I feel like this happens to a lot of people. Like a lot of people drink and party a lot and blah, blah, blah. And that was like the most I'd ever like drank and partied. So for sure that had something to do with it. Right. But,
yeah, and then the stress that like, oh no, it's real life.
oh my God. So, well, yeah, that too. Like I had stress going into college, and then I had stress coming out of college, and I was like, I knew I didn't want to be like the big corporate girl, right? Like I wanted to work for a smaller place and whatever. Anyway, so I just didn't feel like I was, like I just wasn't, I was different from like a lot of people that I went to college with. They all got recruited out of Cal Poly San Luis Obispo to go work in San Francisco and work in tech companies and kind of sell their souls a little bit, right? And I just like saw that bullshit and was like, no, absolutely not, like not for me. And so I got super nervous surrounding like, okay, well, I don't have a job lined up, so like, am I going to be successful? And I was super nervous about that. And so I think the stress definitely played a part of all things combined. And so yeah, anyways, going back to that like blah feeling, I had started, diving back into fitness stuff and my health journey and trying to figure things out and Googling things and, why do I feel so blah, like what's going on? And the main thing that the internet was telling me, right, was like hypothyroidism. And my mom has that. And my grandmother on her side had it as well. And so I was like, what the hell? Like already? Like I'm only 24, 25. Like, oh my God, like, is stuff changing for me? Like what's happening all of a sudden? And so I went to my gynecologist and I was like, hey, what's up with, like, I don't feel great. Like, what's up with this? Like, could it potentially be my birth control too, right? Because I had been on birth control since I was maybe like 14 or 15, I think. And so that was already like 10 years down the road. And, she was like, no, it can't be birth control. Like, no, not at all. She was like, let's get your T3 and T4 tested and see what's going on with potentially your thyroid. And I can't remember if they actually tested cortisol or not. I remember like specifically T3 and T4.
Yeah.
And I remember going to get it drawn and whatnot, and I was like, yes, I'm going to get some answers. Like, I kind of like was hoping that something was wrong so that I could feel like there was a problem to solve, right? And I would feel better.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because once you know the problem, then it's like, sweet, I can.
Yeah, cool. Then we're good, right? But I was like, all of a sudden, I just wasn't feeling good. So, anyways, she gets the results back. Everything looks fine. Yada da, la di da, like, go on with your life. We didn't talk about anything beyond that. A couple years later, I had gone back to her and I was like, I don't want to be on birth control anymore. Like, tell me what's up with this copper IUD situation, this non-hormonal thing, because I was like, I think that could be a part of it, but I want to be on something, but like, I don't know, whatever. I didn't know about like cycle syncing and all these things that are like popular and stuff now, right? And nobody had ever like educated me on like anything as far as like women's health. So I went in to talk to her about it, and she was like, basically she had a lot of like bad feelings about the copper IUD, and she's like, no, and she's like, I would recommend you going on one of the smaller ones, which is a low dose, hormonal little plastic IUD that goes in your uterus or whatever. And she was like, try this out and see if you like it, and whatever, if not, then we'll take it out, but she was like, I have been on it for off and on for like the past 10 years through having kids and stuff. And she's like, I've never had any problems. So she highly recommended it. And like, I always thought I like highly respected her. And so I was like, yeah, okay. Like,
But she's a doctor.
she's a doctor too.
Should.
Yeah. Yeah. And she just had a really good reputation back home. I mean, she still does. She's an amazing doctor. And like, she's delivered a million cute little babies. And like, I really enjoy her. But she didn't really take the time to educate me about any of the stuff, even though I was going in there with questions. And like, it was intimidating too. You know what I mean? Because if you're being told all that, then it's like, all right, I don't feel like I have the confidence to like keep asking the questions, even though I still am not feeling great. And like, I had tried all the birth control types too. Like growing up, like I had tried the pill, I tried the Depo shot, if you remember when that was a thing. Like I had tried all the things, and I always felt the best when I wasn't on anything. But it's like I didn't want to potentially get pregnant, right? Because it's like a huge fear for women.
Yeah.
And so of course, like with the lack of education, just whatever, it all spirals out of control. And so yeah, basically like I tried it and I was like, okay, cool, we'll see what happens, and really enjoyed it. But it's like I still never got out of the fog. And so I actually got my first IUD right before I moved here. So yeah, I think it was like fall of 2017. So I had just gotten a new one before I came in to see you guys. And like it was like nothing I'd ever experienced before, where like my face started to break out like crazy, like right around my chin, and I just felt all over the place. And I was like, man, my hormones must be like crazy out of whack, right? And they're like trying to figure out what the hell is going on with my body. And once that kind of like leveled out a little bit, again, I was just like, God, the fog is almost like worse at this point. Like it's to the point where like it's annoying. And also like I was having problems like losing weight and stuff too, and I was just like, what? Like there has to be something going on internally, because like I've tried everything. Like I've erased everything that I've done. I've gone back to square one. I'm looking at quality of water. I'm looking at quality of food, quality of sleep. I've changed my mindset on what type of workouts I'm doing, because growing up, like especially after sports, like I liked like the high intensity workouts and stuff. Like I wanted to completely exhaust myself. Like I love that feeling. And so I tried to like reset my mindset on that, and I still am. I still want to like be that competitive person, and so there's days where like I'm like, let me just do like one AMRAP or something, like let me just play a little bit. But yeah, I have to fight against that every day. And so I started doing all that, slowing down, whatever. My stress has been lowered because we're actually working from home, and I work really well from home, and I can sleep in a little bit later. I'm not commuting to work. All these things kind of started to add up, and I was like, all right, I feel better, but I still don't feel 100%, like some of my friends do, and I want to feel 100%. Like, why am I not feeling 100%? And so that's when I started talking to Maddie and Savannah, and they were like, and so many other girls too, that were like, the missing key for me was getting off of birth control, and like that's like the best thing I've ever done for my life, and XYZ. So that's when I started to really consider it. And then Savannah was like, you should go talk to John at MSW Lounge, and honestly, you can do a full blood panel. He'll tell you exactly what's going on in your body. And I was like, what? Like, that is cool. Like,
that was you can do
that?
Yeah,
I was like, that's the first time I've ever heard of that. Which that should be like way more widely known, and like I hope eventually this reaches like 1 million people, because like universal healthcare for me in the future looks like everyone gets one of those. Like,
well, the thing about it is that it's not like any doctor can order it.
Right.
So they just don't.
And is it in your experience too that they don't necessarily know how to like read it totally?
Part of it. So man,
I guess that's like so. Yikes.
Man, like it's one of those things that like I mentioned this to CJ earlier, and who's actually one of our business partners for this. It's just that it's like so even if they do know, and perhaps a lot of them do know, let's just go to the assumption that they all know.
Right.
Let's take that assumption.
Yeah.
Well, they're still human, and they still have priorities, which is could be family, and they also have debts.
Right.
Especially school debts, and which means that they have to earn money somehow, which means that a lot of times they rely on a system that doesn't really work, and I'm referring to the insurance system.
Yep.
Which dictates how a lot of doctors have to practice, because or else the insurance won't cover what they did, and so that's a big part of it, and that's the part as in our three arms of the different businesses that we have. that's the part that drives me because it's the part that I understand. And but even with like you can get cash prices on labs, and they're not cheap. and
Right.
and then it's really interesting because like I'll talk to some of the labs, and we are partnered with one, and it's just a lot of work to actually make it live,
Right.
but thankfully we partnered up with one. And because my question has always been, but if I order more of these tests, why can't I get a better price?
Mm.
Because that's supply and demand. Like that's
Mhm.
just how the world works, unless there's no supply. But there's plenty of supply.
Right. Right.
So and so then I don't understand, like, and how I can't get a better price so that I can offer that price to my clients, to my to people that are want to know these things.
Right.
And that just never made any sense to me. It's like I don't understand how, like, if I'm ordering, like, if I started as a small business and I was ordering 5 labs a week, and you're giving me a certain price, I get it. But if I'm now ordering 100 labs a week, like, why couldn't I get a price cut on that?
Yeah. Yeah.
Right,
It's
like,
interesting.
right, and so, um, right, like it just
Industry
makes
is so
sense. Like,
interesting. Yeah.
well, like, why doesn't it work like everything else in the world? Like it should.
Yeah. It is one of those industries, right, that like it almost seems like untouchable, and it's like, why?
Yeah. And so there's a strategy around that, but we're
Right.
not gonna say it now.
Yeah.
But it is kind of a passion of mine, and it's a
Mhm.
long play, but it's a play indeed.
Yeah.
And what was I gonna say? But yeah.
Going back to them reading, so like, we can assume that they all know how to
So
read.
but then they're almost strapped, like they're
Yeah.
handcuffed to like doing it this way because they need insurance to pay for those visits.
Right.
So that way they can pay their bills.
Because
And
that's how society is functioning. Yeah, like it's hard to convince people otherwise.
yeah,
Right?
and so and now of course now a lot of them actually don't know because that would require them continuous education.
Mm.
And even then that is a thing they do. Doctors, nurses, they have to have continued education,
Mhm.
but there's approved ones for that, right?
Mhm.
And so they take those. And so, like, for example, like John and even our nurses, they take those, but like they pass them and they get their credits, but then they're also still doing more education on their own,
Inside, yeah.
on the latest research on like this and like that and glutathione and like this and like
Right.
and it's a continuous. I mean, I do it and I don't even have to because that's not my world. I don't prescribe things to people. I don't coach people. Like,
Right.
I just do it because I like, because I do it for me.
Right. Yeah,
Right?
you want to
And
know. You
in
wanna
the same way that
know.
you did it for yourself, and
Yeah.
then you're like, well, that
I
doesn't make
still do
any
every day.
sense.
Yeah.
But the one thing that you mentioned earlier was that the idea that they're like, oh no, you're good,
Mhm.
and then that's kind of the
That's it.
conversation.
Yeah.
And we've always practiced like education first,
Mhm.
right? Because it's your decision, it's your body, so I have to educate you to want to make the decision that I want you to make to help your
Exactly.
health. I don't want to tell you. I want you to tell me, like, yeah, that's what we're going with.
Yeah.
And then it's easier, right? Because it's so much easier. Because
Mhm.
then you know what the next step is already after that, and I don't have to do anything about it.
Yeah, what's the saying where it's like you teach the man to fish and like he'll feed himself for a lifetime?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's exactly how it felt walking in here too. Because even like, I mean, the science part of like everything that John has like told me about as far as like my blood panel and how it showed up, like a lot of that's over my head, right? But like I understand like the basic parts I need to understand, and I thought it was just so fantastic because not only was he like, I understand how you're feeling. Like, that's a real feeling, the bleh feeling. Like,
Yeah.
he laughed when I did that. And he was like, what's bleh? Like, tell me more.
Yeah.
But he got it. I mean, he immediately looked at me and he wasn't even like, we have to figure this out. He was like, I know exactly what's going on with you, type of thing. Or I have an idea. And he was like, you've been on birth control for 15 years of your life. Like, that in itself, will it'll do something, right? And it just depends on like the level, and like let's actually like see what the blood says,
Yeah.
so that we can actually pinpoint exactly what's going on. And so I think that's the best part, and that's, I think, something that like everyone like should and like absolutely like needs to have access to, because I mean, it's just so crazy. Like, if you think about it in terms of like our bodies are cars, and I think this is always such a good analogy or whatever, but like, you take your car to get serviced and you know exactly what's going on with your car. You know all the ins and outs. But it's like, we don't know what's going on inside of our body at all. And like, that kind of blows my mind. Like, now that I've seen this and like been educated, I'm like, why doesn't anybody like wonder? We all just are out there in the world doing our thing.
Yeah.
And it's like probably like over 75% of people don't know what's going on in their body.
I would say that's a pretty accurate number.
Yeah. Like so many people out there just like going through life, like whatever. And it's like, you don't wonder what's going on inside your body. Like that's a perfect place to start. And that's really the part that like changed my life. And when he like showed me everything that, you know, he had ordered and we talked through it all, I was like, wow, like this makes total sense. Like this makes absolute sense as to how I'm feeling too.
Yeah.
You know?
And it's all just, I mean, using that same car analogy, it's all just fuel, right?
Yeah.
And so like, you know, there's people that are like, well, I only eat because it's just fuel, and it's like, okay, I get it, but you're also not just enjoying your food if you're doing it that way. Where that's also part of life to enjoy the food and all that
You
stuff.
gotta have the balance.
But from that same thing is like, look, you should still get your fuel, and then on top of that, if there's room, go have that extra whatever it is that you like to have. You know, pizza or whatever. You know, ice cream, whatever.
Yeah,
but make sure that the fuel that your body needs to run is there first,
Absolutely.
and then the rest of it is just cherry on top.
Yeah, exactly.
Well.
It's like, yeah, it's like rebuild. Like again, it was like a huge part of me rebuilding everything. But yeah, essentially like, and I'm happy to share like what it looked like too. So John was like, I've never actually seen someone's like hormones look like this before. Like he thought it was super interesting. But I was concerned like, okay, I've been on birth control this whole time, and I was like, what does that look like? Like, is there actual damage, you know, like am I going to have fertility problems in the future? Like I'm just about to turn 30 in July, so like I want to have a family and have kids and all that stuff. And so I was just kind of interested, like, okay, like what really has gone on all these years, you know? And so when my hormones came back, my E1 and my E2 were equal. So E1 is the bad estrogen, right? And then E2 is the good one.
Mm-hmm.
And so I thought that was interesting because it should have been like the E1 should have been a little bit lower, right? Higher. And then the E2 should have been a little bit lower if I were to actually have like fertility problems potentially or something of that nature, right?
That's pretty,
right? Like
that's a very accurate description when you can see that.
Yeah, right, exactly. And so like that's how I remember it too. I remember him very specifically being like, you're okay, like you don't need to freak out tomorrow and like go and get your IUD out or anything like that. So I thought that was interesting. And I kind of like thinking more about it, I'm like, okay, that's probably the case because you know, it's not like normal. It's not a pill or anything like that. It's a lower dose of hormones. Plus, I like all the healthy things that I've been doing has probably helped my body a little bit, but it's just gotten me to like that baseline to where I'm like not in a lot of trouble, right? But then like insert like some of the supplements that you guys have. Like I already like my body has responded amazingly. Like finally everything's clicking. Like I feel like I can trust my brain and like not have these crazy cravings, and I know that like the food I'm eating is more for fuel, and I know my liver's functioning better, and I know my gut's functioning better. And you know the thing about the adrenal glands too, like I had never heard of that, to where he was like, you know, if you've been an athlete and you've done all these high intensity workouts your whole entire life, like you haven't serviced your car, going back to that, because it literally is the perfect analogy. But
you gotta change the brakes.
Yeah, exactly. And so I just had never like really like focused on.
And your adrenals are kind of like your brakes, because they regulate cortisol and insulin, and those things are, you know, cortisol is your fight or flight, and
I could tell that like all of that was off too, and like that's kind of what it showed up as.
And you want smooth running brakes, not like for sure.
And I had always felt like kind of like puffy or swollen or like bloated, you know, and I feel like since I've been taking some of these supplements, like I just immediately my body was like, you feel better now. And so it's gonna be interesting. So John was like, you know, I'll give you the time and space to kind of like think about whether or not you want to get the IUD out. Like, you know, I know, especially like after this one, for sure it's gonna be my last time on birth control. Like I'm very like gung-ho about that, but I had just gotten this inserted, so I was like, well, you know, it was free and like whatever, like it's already in there, like let's ride this baby out.
But you're also preparing for that, right?
Right,
like that's
exactly. Yeah, preparing.
We also run into quite a few people that come in here and they're like, well, I found all this out, and I stopped my birth control, or I got my thing out, so now I need your help. And it's like, whoa, that's a huge change there.
For sure, your body's like, bah!
So it's you're doing it the right way, right? Because you're preparing that, and maybe you start, you know, whatever. That's more of like you and John's decision on how you're going to take that, and how you're going to taper off, and are you going to, you know, all that.
Whatever, yeah.
But what's interesting though is that hormones are just communication.
Right.
It's all it is, right? And so birth control and all that stuff, it's if anything, it disrupts the communication,
Right.
right? And so if your body naturally wants to tell you something, communicate something with you, but you're suppressing it. If you're trying to tell me something, I was like, stop. Like, I don't give a shit. Like, no, I'm not going to listen to you. We're not going to build a very good relationship. Right. And so it's the same thing. What kind of relationship do you have with your body if you're continuously telling, like, no, I'm not going to listen to you. This is what I'm doing.
Yeah.
There's not going to be a very good relationship there, right? So that causes inflammation, blah, blah, blah.
That makes so much sense.
Yeah. And so then it's like, but now if you've had a bad relationship, communication issue with your body for years, it's also not just like, oh, look, we're going to be friends now.
Right. Exactly. Yeah. It takes time. Yeah.
Yeah. So, because your body's like, I don't know if I can trust that, right?
Yeah.
Like, you've been fucking just telling me to shut the fuck up for like 10 years now.
Right.
And so,
it's trying to survive, right?
yeah. So, you got to also prove to your body is like, hey, I'm ready to be friends. Have changed my mindset. I have been doing things differently.
Yeah.
Like, please trust me so that we can communicate with each other properly without having all this extra stuff disrupting us.
It's the perfect way to describe it, because that's exactly how it feels. Like, it feels like finally my body and my mind are talking to each other. It's so crazy.
Exactly.
Like, I can literally physically feel
because that's what hormones are. They're just they're literally communication pathways, right? Like,
yeah. Wow. Yeah.
And it's as simple as that. Like, it's just like, oh, so that means that I don't get pregnant. It's like, no, there's a lot of communication being in there. Like, so and it's funny because I just started with a new coach myself. And I feel like I'm pretty good at communication. I mean, I'm great at sales. So
you got the gift of the gab.
But it's funny because we did our 2-hour first initial session, and then he's like, "We need to improve your communication," and I was like, "Okay." Like that, I mean, I'm not gonna fight that because you said you're the coach, and he's a hypnotherapist and also an NLP coach and all that stuff, and he's my new coach for the next at least for the next 6 months, and I'm really excited to be working with him.
Yeah.
He was on a podcast recently, as well, and so it's like, who am I to question now, right?
Yeah.
Like and then I said, well, it's all growth, so I'm all for it. So
yeah, you might as well try it, and I mean, even if it's not working out for you, you can go back around the other way.
Yeah.
So yeah, you might as well try. Yeah.
I mean, the worst thing that can happen is I become a better communicator.
Yeah, right. Absolutely. And definitely not a bad thing. Yeah, that's actually interesting. I actually just started working with a health coach too, and this is like the first time that I've had like the energy in like all ways, shapes, and forms to like really dive into that. And it was interesting. I was telling him kind of about this health journey and stuff, and I was like, I just feel so good, and that's the other thing I want to mention. Like, so I haven't gotten my IUD out yet. We're gonna see in 6 months what my hormones and stuff look like, and I'm really interested just from like a scientific point of view to like see how well the supplements and like what I'm doing are working, and see where my hormones lie, and then from there we'll decide kind of like I'll decide what's going on.
And that's the right way to do it.
Yeah,
right?
such a cool thing too, to see like the physical proof of like what's going on. But yeah, anyway, so I've had all this new energy because I'm feeling so good. My mind and my body talking to each other, like it's been so great. And I felt like a little bit restless almost, to where I was like, there's not enough stimulating me. Like I'm like way up here on this vibration, like I'm got this high vibe now, and not like I didn't before, but now it's like way like I'm leveled up,
Yeah, for sure. Like you
feel like a superhuman. Yeah.
That's badass. That's awesome.
Yeah, but it's like, now what, and
wait,
so,
what was that? What you were an athlete back in college?
So not in college, unfortunately, but I played volleyball. I played everything growing up, but tennis and volleyball were my
Oh, really?
Yeah.
I'm a tennis player.
Are you? We
Yeah.
should go play. I've been trying to get back in.
Yeah, I played college tennis, and so that was a
cool.
lot of fun for many years.
Yes. Such a great sport.
It's a fantastic
Such a good sport. Yeah.
I wish I would have known the things I know now about health.
Yes.
Because, man, I used to the reason I was good is because I just did not stop. Like,
Yeah.
it was all day, every day.
Dang.
And
I have such respect for that too, because so when I was younger, I actually switched to volleyball because I couldn't live in my own head that much. It was like so terrifying to me. And
I used to throw rackets.
That's how I was.
Cuss at the net. Like,
yep.
Man, it was
like hit balls super hard.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's how I was. I just couldn't. That's so respect for you for running towards that, because I was like, I gotta be around people so that I don't act this way. Like, this is
I know.
wild.
God, man, that sport is really interesting, and it's hard.
It's
I remember
hard.
one coach told me, it was like, you gotta be the fastest guy. It was like in tennis, and just like, no, like of ever. was like, but I'm not. And she's like, just trust me.
I disagree with that because I think you can be smarter strategy
Sure,
wise. You can proactively think where the next shot is going to go.
Oh, definitely.
And be
There's
there.
a lot of that.
Yeah, I mean, being fast is great, but like,
Yeah.
yeah, if you're a proactive thinker, like you're gonna be great at tennis.
Well, I feel well. I don't know if I can be as good, but I feel like I play easier now. Like
Yeah.
I get more done easier
Yeah,
in a tennis match now than I used to before.
that's probably a lot of things, like just efficiency, maturity, all the things.
Yeah, not
Smarter.
cussing at the fucking at the ball for no damn
The
reason.
EQ, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, but that's a huge part of it, like the emotional intelligence part, right? And so that's like I've always kind of done that for myself. Like I've always been like a big journaler, like that's how I work out my shit. But yeah, like, seeing a health coach for the first time, he does like a little bit of therapy and stuff too. So he's like, "Well, you have everything else figured out." He's like, "You're doing great in your career. You think you're going to start this business too on the side, and you know, your health is good. Like you have all this new energy." He's like, "Let's dive into the hard stuff and like really get into your emotional like intelligence." So I don't know if it's been like that for you, but like that's really what I'm heading towards with like my new found energy. That's what's next for me.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
How's it been? So for me, it's been the constant battle has. Well, I don't even know if I want to say constant because like, it hasn't been a focus, but now
Yeah.
there's a focus of like a romantic relationship and then my beliefs of what they were before. And that's kind of how that's actually how I found this coach. He just manifested.
Yeah.
I
You start
don't-
talking about it and it just appears.
Well, it's really.
Everyone knows someone.
I was standing at at a booth and he just sat there to tie his shoes and he's like, "You're really loud." I was like, I didn't say anything and
Shut up.
and he was just he at that point and then he just like dissected me and then I was like, what? So then
What?
actually like 15 minutes later or so, I had my gear with him, so we jumped on a podcast and we're about to release it in a week or two.
Oh my
and
god, I
it's-
can't wait.
Yeah,
Dude,
and
that is like the wow. Where did you find this person?
it's at a festival that we were like.
That's so cool. Like those are the type of people like that's the kind of frequency I want to be on where I can just look at someone. Like I'm already kind of that way to where I can feel like what your vibe is, but like just to like be like you're really loud.
Yeah,
Like,
yeah.
That's so cool.
Yeah, no, well, the thing is that he was very accurate in all the things. And I was like, well, I never knew about that. But yeah, that makes complete sense.
Wow.
And then, yeah, so and then what's happened is that I gave him a ride because we were like in Dripping Spring, which is about an hour south of Austin. And I gave him a ride back into
Yeah.
town. And he's from, San Diego. He's based out of San Diego.
That's cool.
And he's like, "Is it cool if I take a couple calls?" Like, well, I was like, "Hell yeah!" So I got to experience him coaching this like high level CEO
Yeah.
somewhere, and like basically his client was in a meeting with the rest of the board,
Yeah.
and he had him in his ear or whatever, and
What?
he was coaching him through some
That's
stuff, and I
tight.
was like, that was some big decisions being made there, and like he had some influence in that, and it was pinpoint, and it was nothing like tell him this. It was more like this is how you can think through that.
Cool.
And I was like, oh,
That's really interesting. Yeah. So my health coach is actually through my company that I work for, the search firm. He's really cool. His name is Mike Foster. I think he has Instagram and stuff too. But he's like been on Oprah and whatever. He's kind of a bigwig. But he got brought on by my boss who has a 10-year-old son who was going through some anxiety stuff through COVID. And she was like, man, if my kid who's 10 years old is feeling this, you know, she was probably like, I wonder how, or she was literally like, I wonder how everyone at work is feeling. So she brought him on. So he's super cool. He definitely knows what he's talking about, which is nice. But she, anyways, at the firm, I think, yeah, this is kind of lost my train of thought there.
that's fine. So your coach
Glasses. Yeah, but dang, it was something about
was
work.
helping your firm, or is helping your firm.
Yeah.
And he's a badass.
He is a badass, but something else about oh no, so the side of the business that I eventually want to be on is kind of similar to what your coach kind of does, where so we have a side of the business that's like basically we search for the executives to build out these leadership firms. But the other side of our business is called leadership advisory. And what we do is really like assess people. So we'll assess like the entire leadership team, understand their personality traits, all those things, and then find like the best person to fill in the slot that's missing or
Nice.
like change things up. Yeah. So it's super strategic. And that's really where that's like the side of the business that I'm really interested in, that I essentially want to move over to eventually. But then the guy who runs that is actually super sports minded too. He's an ex hockey player, and so he kind of like weaves that in with everything. But he, yeah, it's super. I mean, I think it's like such a perfect
Yeah.
like combination, you know. But he was like, yeah, I also on the side kind of do like executive coaching. And he was like, it's really cool to be involved with all these super high performing people and
Yeah.
like help them be even better because they have problems too.
Well, we all
We
do,
all have
right?
problems. Yeah.
Yeah.
But I think that's
Well,
like
it's
next
funny because
level.
he, my coach was mentioning something about like, what's crazy because these people are like, they're running 10, 20, 30 million dollar companies, and they want
Yeah.
my help to get them to 100 million, or from 100 million to get to a billion.
Yeah.
And usually the biggest issue is that they're running these freaking incredible companies, but then they go home and they're like, hey, can you please clean your room? And their kids are like, fuck you.
Right.
And then they're like, what? You know, and they just don't know how to deal with that because they're used to like
Just business mode.
16 to 18 hours running company, and shit gets done the way they ask, and it works, and it fucking like there's no questions asked. There's tons of respect and like whatever, and your kid's just like whatever. I don't give a fuck about what you say.
Yeah.
Right?
Absolutely. It's so crazy, but yeah, it's a
And
real,
then so
real
then it's a
thing.
communication thing, right? And so
Mhm.
that's where that came. And what's crazy about it is that you're talking about leadership, moving into leadership now.
Yeah.
There was definitely a thing where I've always rejected leadership. And
Like someone who's like above you.
no,
Or
like
you
me
being a
being
leader.
a leader,
Yeah.
more than the sense and then I gave him an example. I was like, that makes a lot of sense because I remember a time in high school
Yeah.
where like I was like the top player, and I had I had my coach come to my house to talk to me after me and my mom, and she was crying and because like she was trying to get me to be like, hey, you gotta be a better example because everybody looks up to you, and like you work so hard, and like I love everything you do, but like you can't act that way on the court, like people, like whatever, like it doesn't work for people. And I was like, well, I never asked them to look up to me. You know, like I don't. It's not my fault they want to look up to me. Like they can fucking hit as many serves as I do before and after, and they'll be just as good. Just tell them that, right?
Yeah. You
She's
just
like, no.
naturally have the influence, though. Yeah.
So then that's the part. It's like, well, you can't just strive for success and not expect people to look up to you,
Right.
and you gotta accept the responsibility, or just or become a badass in the dark and don't tell anyone about it.
Yep.
Right.
I honestly deal with a lot of the same stuff because I like naturally just have influence over people too, like and it's like a huge responsibility, and like there's days where I'm like, I don't want to, like I managed a team at one point and I was like, this is absolutely not for me, like I cannot, this is not for me. So I've definitely like been fighting against it myself, but I think it's like you can kind of create it to how you want it to be and how it works for you.
Sure.
Right? And like you're probably like happier being a leader here, right? Because this makes sense for you.
Well, there's also the connect. I was like, well, there's plenty of times well, there's been plenty of times where like I can tell that they're like looking for leadership, like even our team, and I'm just like, well, go talk to John because he's like the lead, or at least that's how I would deflect it. It's like, well, he's the real leader. Like I'm doing my own thing, and kind of deflecting that. Now there's a lot more that I'm not going to share behind that, but I was like, oh, I'm starting to make those ties, and it's like, but that's not really the person I want to be, and I never saw that being part of the person I want, or being or not being a part of the person I actually really want to be, which is a responsible, I guess, good leader in this sense.
Right.
But leadership is an incredible thing, right? I mean, you guys, you're in a business that's what you do.
Yeah, literally like building these like high performing, executive teams to drastically change the software space. I mean, and like tech is everywhere, right? So it's like we work in a very niche market, but it's like so big at the same time. So it's been overwhelming for me to kind of like learn and understand, but Yeah, it's it's wild. And like there's parts of me too where I'm like I don't totally agree with like tech taking over the world. I love tech and like what it's doing and you know how it makes things more efficient, but I don't think every company is doing it for the right reasons, right?
Sure.
And I think there's you know whatever moral dilemmas with that, but at the same time like I still like it's going to keep happening and I might as well like be a good impact on that and like being a recruiter, it's so interesting because like I was actually going to go into sales too. That was kind of like I had like a little taste of the recruiting world. I never ever thought I was going to grow up and do that. So I was like, well, you know, kind of like that, but like sales would be dope. Like I have the gift of the gab. Like I'm super good at creating networks and building relationships. Like sales wouldn't be hard for me as long as it's a company that I believe in, you know. And so I was potentially going to go and do that until I got this opportunity that was like I was approached for this.
Yeah.
But I love it like wholeheartedly. I think recruiting like makes such good sense for me and like just, you know, I kind of have that sales mind, but I'm not actually selling anybody anything. I'm just like making sure I'm getting them the right opportunity and right culture fit and everything. But yeah, there's so much that goes in behind it, and so it's absolutely like fascinating to me. But so it's like I enjoy getting these people these opportunities and like, you know, it could potentially change someone's life, like their family's life. Like,
Yeah.
you know, there is the money incentive. And like most of them at this point, most of the people I'm talking to, they are such like high level people that they're like, you know, at this point in my life, it's not about money. It's more about the right culture fit and something that's fun for me. And like, you know, it has to fit into balance. And I want to live my life as well as like helping a company. Right. So I think that's pretty cool. It's been really nice to hear that and like hear the change of how people are talking about their lives. But truly what fascinates me is like wanting to dive into that psychology part and like helping these people function, because that's more of just like my passion, right? Like you asked me earlier, like, do you want to be a coach? And like if I was ever like a coach, it wouldn't be in the fitness way. Like if
Yeah.
when I have kids and stuff, I you know would be happy to kind of like coach them or whatever in sports, like as little
Yeah.
nuggets. But yeah, in terms of like coaching, it would be more of like that leadership advisory or like helping people in that sense, because I have much more of a passion, like a care for that, and I think it's kind of like a natural superpower and something I'm interested in. And I think that's really the way a lot of businesses will keep going, right? Like everyone wants to know how they're functioning, what's their personalities, and we're just gonna all kind of fit together in these like beautiful puzzles. And so I think, you know, the frequency and what's gonna happen is gonna be a lot more high vibe. And so I think that's fascinating, and like learning all that leadership stuff will bleed into my life as well, right? Like there's so many other places I could go and impact once I have like that better psychology foundation, and like helping design these teams, because then I can go off and help more executives or
Yeah.
whoever else too, right? Like I think that would be cool.
Yeah. That'd be great to have a badass leadership team coaching session.
Right? Yeah, they have full sessions too where it's like, you know, especially like if they look at a team and they survey everyone and everyone's like, you know, our trust is super low and nobody trusts anybody on the team, like you're not collaborating then, right? Like nobody's going to actually believe you that you're doing these things or whatever, and like they're not going to get to where they want to be if there's no trust. And so they go through like these boot camps and stuff and like helping people figure their shit out, and like I definitely want to learn.
So the
more
firms
about
that hire you guys, are you working with firms that are like making sudden growth, or that are already at that level?
Yeah, so it's like high growth, but it's specifically private equity backed software companies. So the private equity guys are the ones that are coming to us and they're like, hey, we need your help.
That makes sense. So it's like we're about to expand this business and we're going to need some true leadership here.
Exactly. Because, I mean, you know how it is. Like, they're giving money to these people, right? So it's like their way or the highway a little bit. So
yeah, in a sense. Yeah. It's part of the reason why we haven't like ever taken outside investors.
Yeah, it's super smart. I mean, and I think it depends on really what you want to do. Like a lot of these tech companies, like, yeah, whatever, they just want to scale and like be full functioning and like that's it, you know. So I think like that's fine for them, but it doesn't make sense for everybody. And there's a lot of people too that like, especially when I hear about like a lot of our friends creating businesses and stuff, like it's like definitely really think about it before you take somebody's money, because once you take somebody's money, you're answering to them. And that's, you know, maybe not a lot of rules that you want to follow. Like,
and by the way, if you're listening to that and that's connecting you, there are different ways to get money without having them to be influential. Absolutely. In that sense. I feel like if we were to ever take that type of money, it would have to just be like, hey, I'm here to give you some money and you don't have to worry about anything. Like, I'm not going to change anything.
I literally just love what you guys are doing. Here's money to keep doing.
Correct. But because have been offered some money, and you know, I've taken the meetings and I'm just like, yeah, no.
Yeah, that's good.
And so it's now it would if I was truly in for that, like then I would be like, okay, that would be my constant search
Right.
of like, okay, no, I'm gonna find the right money from the right person, and that would be almost like a full time job to like to
Absolutely.
try to find the right money from the right person that's not gonna change this. But then who's gonna be running this business
Exactly.
if
Well, and like,
if my life is trying to find this money
right.
when I can just create the money
If you're right,
slowly,
right. Well, exactly. It's
but
much
that's fine.
slower. But also, if you're going and searching for that money, it's not going to be the right person
Yeah.
ever, right? Like the people that you want to invest in you are the people that are naturally drawn to you. That's
Correct.
much more authentic, and they're not. Those are going to be the people who don't want to like give you rules and stuff. So yeah, I mean, it's going to be a lot slower, lot of a longer journey, but I think it's going to be a way better end result for sure.
Well, and you get to build it the way you want.
Yes.
Right? Like take your time, do it the way you want, because I think that that's important. I mean, how can you make it creative if all of a sudden someone wants you to do it the way that that has been working?
Exactly.
Because then it's just profits, right? And so
Yep. So it's looking, it's literally like a game. It's, I mean, it's like the
And then
stock
you can't-
market, right? Like
and then you can't lead an industry in that way.
absolutely. Yeah, you guys are trying to be a catalyst in an industry. Like that's definitely not the way to do it. So
Yeah.
yeah, that makes a lot of sense. But yeah, slower the better, baby. Everything you guys are doing is fantastic. So like, just don't stop. Just
Yeah,
keep going.
I mean, there's no rush.
No.
Right? Like we talk about time, and we were talking about time earlier.
Yep.
And you're like, oh, it just takes time, or like, or at least, or it takes a lot of. What were you talking about? We said something about a lot of time, and I was like, or at least it's a lot of time in the way we perceive time.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. I don't know.
I don't remember what it was, but the
Talked about so
perception
much.
of time.
Yeah.
Yeah,
It's
let's
an
get into that
interesting-
real
yeah.
quick.
Let's do it.
The linear and the non-linear timelines.
Yeah.
Have you done any timeline therapy yet?
No. Well, I actually, what's the definition of that? Like, maybe. I
The-
feel like I have done things, but I don't always know the name of them, you know?
So, but again, like the universe works in different in weird ways, right?
Yeah.
And so, as I found my new coach, there was still going to be a 3 or 4 week gap between when I actually started coaching with him, and in between that gap, we were working some other event with some friends of ours, Carl and Margot. I don't know if you know Margot, Heimholtz and
Would love to meet them.
Yeah.
Reach out to me.
Carl Hines and their NLP coaches, and they had invited me like 2 or 3 weeks prior to that, or invited John and I to come and do IVs and do the drinks,
Hell yeah.
and maybe give a small talk on neuroscience while we were there.
Dope.
We're like, yeah, for sure. And then it just happened to be that went to the thing, met the coach. This is a different event. And the next week, I was like at this event, so I ended up doing a 3-week NLP training with them,
Cool.
which was incredible. And one of the things that we did was timeline therapy. And there's this idea that or this tool that whatever, and they picked several of us to go up and use as examples of how it gets done, and tapped into a lot of different things. And is the idea of like, okay, so like what's an emotion that you're having a hard time dealing with it, and like tap into that emotion. What is that? Right. And so it was kind of the idea, and I might be butchering it a little bit because I need to study it a little bit more, but I was like, all right, cool. So take that emotion, that experience with maybe it's a conversation or a feeling that you have towards whoever, anger or whatever, and then like kind of step above it real quick, right? And then look at it from the top,
Yeah.
right? And there's like that emotion, like the question was, ask your subconscious if when was the first time you experienced that emotion? When did you learn that emotion? Right? And it was that idea that, and then the question was it before birth? Meaning like, was
In
that
the womb?
something? Well, no, sure, or also from a previous
Life.
life,
Yeah.
or was it during birth, or was it after birth, right? And so then that answer would come
Nice.
in a subconscious way, and it's like, oh no, it's definitely like before birth, and then it's like, man, like, so can you
the
ask like
soul.
where was it? Can you tap into that, or like was it something that was a physical experience during birth kind of deal, or when did it happen? And if it was after birth, and ask your subconscious, at what age, and then 3
From
or
there,
4 or whatever, and then that would come up, and then it's like, well, can you tap into that experience,
Yeah.
right? And what was that? And doesn't have to be like, because I remember I did it, and I was like, I don't remember what that experience was, but I do remember feeling that emotion, and I guess that age was 6 years old.
Yeah.
And then it's kind of like, okay, well, so then let's let that go.
Mm.
And the idea is that you unlearn that experience back then, and it kind of undoes that experience all the way through.
Interesting. Yeah.
And then there's the idea that and I'm gonna blow your mind a little bit here. There's that idea
Ready.
that like if you're younger, then you have a lot less to undo with that emotion.
Right.
But what's really crazy is that when my coach was saying about like you're really loud kind of deal,
Yeah.
there's one thing that I said after that to him, and I was like, well, I'm glad that you can tell that, because I could not tell you what I was thinking, because I was like I was obviously in it, but
Right.
I couldn't, like, I have no idea what I was thinking.
It was
He's
probably
like,
just so loud you couldn't hear.
well, he said, well, that's because it was a trauma from whenever you were like 2 years old or so, before you knew words. And I was like, what?
Like, how do you know this?
Yeah.
Sir?
Yeah, I know. And so
That's so
so
cool.
then that's like, okay, well, that makes sense, that like if you're trying to think about something and you don't have words for it, it's very possible that you're trying to think about something that you didn't have words for,
Interesting.
right?
Wow.
And,
Yeah.
and so then they're like, okay, that makes, like, what's up? Who
Yeah.
are you?
Yeah, right. Yeah, exactly. Like, okay, we need to talk more. Yeah, I don't know. So I haven't done that like formally. I feel like
Yeah.
I've tried to do that a little bit informally myself, but kind of along the same lines. So what I was going through with my coach, he was asking me, or he was also telling me about like, what is your primal question? And I don't know if you've heard of this before, but essentially it's like a question that you have lived with throughout your entire life, and like it's basically like at your core, like what everything is kind of surrounded by. I actually have two. So my first one is, am I secure? And my second one is, am I successful? And so both of those questions, like any way that I show up in a situation, I'm always constantly thinking about those, not like very unconsciously, right? Like it's just literally ingrained in my body, in my whatever, my language. And I thought that was so interesting, because it comes directly from childhood, right? Like both of these questions, and they show up in every facet, in everything that I do. And I think it's just one of those things, like once you start understanding that, you can turn them from questions into statements. So you can start saying like, I am secure, or I am successful, and like start defining that. And so I think it's kind of along the same lines,
Yeah.
but I do like what you're talking about with like, does a certain feeling come from before you were even born? Because I definitely think that's a thing. Like Joe Lindley and I, like one of our friends, we joke that we have this connection, like this friendship, that like we feel like we've just been surfers in the ocean shooting the shit for years. Like it's so weird, like our level of friendship, and like I've never experienced it with anyone else. And he like that description is like what we both came up with, where we're like, why do we feel like this is so accurate?
Yeah.
And we're like, maybe that was us, like in,
In
maybe
a previous life.
yeah, maybe in the 60s we were old and like hanging out, whatever, watching the sunset, just shooting the shit, and here we are now kind of doing the same thing, right? Like we're not on surfboards right this second, but like yeah, so I wholeheartedly believe in that, and it sounds like you do too.
Yeah, well, I'm getting. I mean, I immediately ordered books on like previous life stuff, and like I was, well, because that wasn't what my experience was, but I was like, I'm really interested in that, because I've never really, I don't want to say believed in like in a past life experience. The thing is, like, the way that I see it, we're all energy, and so energy only ever gets transferred; it doesn't get lost. So I could totally see how I could have been another person at a different point, but I don't think that it's mandatory, or that it must be. It could have easily been a rock.
I for sure at least was a dolphin. Like maybe
That's
Joe and I were both.
animal.
Oh my god, they're literally the best. I mean, mine's a unicorn. Like mine's actually a mixture we came up with. It's a unicorn and a mermaid.
Yeah. Well, there's actually some psychedelics you can do to actually know what your spirit animal
What the
is.
real spirit? Well, okay, yeah, I just like made that up myself.
Yeah,
but like
sure.
yeah, it's all combined. It's all comes back from the ocean, because I mean I'm a little like ocean baby, but yeah.
Yeah.
That's
What
tight.
is your? I don't know. I'm gonna ask you this question and I have no idea what it means. But what's
my sign?
Yeah.
I love it.
It's like I know mine, and it's a Cancer, but
I'm a Cancer.
Nice. Okay.
Yes.
Cool, perfect.
Yeah.
But I don't know
we're
what
similar.
it means. Like,
I mean, I know what ours is, so I'm glad that you're Cancer too, because if you said something else, if it was like Gemini, I would totally understand, but I only know like Geminis and Cancers. But Cancers, we're just like super kind of emotional. We just feel a lot. Like, we're just feely and like watery. That's the best way to put it.
See, and that still means nothing to me.
Exactly. Yeah. Just emotional, I guess.
Right,
I don't
like,
know.
yeah.
But it's like, that's kind of just being a human. So yeah, I don't know. Whatever.
Yeah, because that would be my thing. So does that mean that the other people aren't emotional?
Right.
Right.
I mean, I think, yeah, I don't even know. Whatever. It's so funny. Aaron would totally be like, oh, I understand you guys now. But the reason I know about Geminis is because all of my best guy friends are Geminis. And I think it's interesting because, like, I show up as this like caring, loving person, and like that's how like basically Geminis just like want to feel like loved and like have loyalty in people and like feel safe, and so like literally like Gemini guys just like gravitate towards me and they're like, I need you.
That's funny.
Yeah, that's the only reason.
Is that May?
Yeah.
It's interesting. I have a lot of friends that are May.
Yeah, literally, exactly. See, like they probably like flock to you because you're safe. You're their safe zone. Yeah, because Joe Lindley and I think Noah Heisman too. They're like one day apart. They're both Gemini guys, and
That's
they're like
funny.
two of my good guy friends. Yeah.
Wait, when's your birthday?
July 7th.
Oh no, I'm the
When's
15th.
Yeah, cool. Love it. Cancers for life.
I know. My other buddy is also. He's July 3rd. We have a lot of July people here.
That's cool. Yeah.
But I guess we have a lot of everything. It's a big community in Austin, so.
Yeah, it really is. Yeah.
That's really interesting. That's cool.
Yeah.
Well,
good stuff. Good chat.
Yeah, that's fantastic. I mean, where can they find you? What do you else do you have going on?
Yeah, that's a good question. I would love to talk about that. So yeah, I'm mostly on Instagram right now at chickbro.chelsea. That's my, I don't want to call it like my alter ego. That's who I am at my core.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's not my personal Instagram, but yeah, it's who I am. I like to, describe myself as like I'm the bridge to the gap that is like the business world and the fitness world. Like, I'm just like both, and I think there's space for both, especially for women. Like, I think it needs to be talked about more, so I'm kind of that person. My like slogan or like tagline that we've all come up with is soft but savage, and it means like, soft and empathetic and like, whatever, but savage. Like, you can be a savage in business, in weights or whatever, and kind of like giving girls confidence in that space. So yeah, that's my vibe. Eventually
they can find you at Squatch too.
Yeah, find me at Squatch. I'm literally always that's where. So I'm actually gonna be doing a deadlifting competition. That's
nice.
my next thing. Yeah. So I just started learning about barbell lifts and whatnot in like last October. I've never done it in my like entire life. It's always just been like bodyweight stuff or dumbbells or kettlebells or whatever. And so I'm so excited about it. I love it. Deadlifting is so badass to me. So that's going to be my next goal.
Awesome.
Yeah. So you'll see me doing that. So please follow along on that journey if you're interested. And I will be doing that at Squatch. And one of the coaches there, Corey, is going to be helping me. So that'll be super fun.
That's awesome.
Yeah. And so I think that's a good thing too. That's like going along with pairing or with repairing my hormones too. Because it's kind of like not such crazy high intensity, but it's still really fun. I still feel super savage. So it's like a good outlet for me. And then post that, I want to do one of the High Rocks competitions too that everyone's been.
I signed up for
about.
High Rocks, and dude, they're
this
great.
month.
Yeah, but I'm not gonna be able to make it because I'm still training
like
I'm doing it because
good for you.
Because I'm climbing and we pushed back one of my climbing trips. And so I'm a big climber.
I'm learning so much about you. I love that. That's
and
super
so,
cool.
And so it's still gonna help me to train that way because.
Absolutely.
So today we went to let's shut it off here.
Okay.
You got this shit knocking though.